of course, I should probably introduce myself first. Recently outed as a casual late-night online gamer, I am your host, James Allsup. White supremacist!
We should also be okay with family pride, traditional values pride, heterosexual pride.
That may be the gayest thing I've ever heard.
Hallelujah, I'm a boomer, and your hatred makes me sick. My McMansions are lily white, while yours are racially mixed. Hallelujah, I'm a boomer, David Starr before the flag. Though they're now the same, and I am to blame. What you gonna do? Might as well be a Jew. Hallelujah, I'm a boomer.
So these fucking boomers! And he was very passionate, as Stefan is. I love Stefan Molyneux. Completely, cucked. So cucked into oblivion. And I don't want to criticize capitalism,
Marxist school system, and Hollywood propaganda.
why we want the Mexicans sent the fuck back. You can't. I think the kids who grew up without cable TV, oftentimes come out, much more because they don't get exposed. They don't have the Zog machine, pumping the propaganda into their living room. We need to tell the truth about the clash of civilizations. That's a term that I heard in history class, and they made fun of it my freshman year in college. They made fun of, there's these people who believe in the clash of civilizations, that Islamic civilization and Western civilization can't be compatible. Oh, those dumb bigots. Who's the dumb bigot now? Who's the idiot now?
It's still you. Hello there everybody, and welcome to episode 44 of The Descent of Man-osphere, the series where I take you through the ways in which the Man-osphere and its utterly disgusting, reprehensible douchebag inhabitants are trying to reverse human evolution and drag us all back into the fucking sea. And today we're dealing with a cheap knockoff version of Richard Spencer. Yes, it's the trust fund Nazi himself, it's James Allsup! And yes, the comparison to Richard Spencer goes beyond James just having the same politics and haircut as the world's most punchable man, because Lil Jimmy Allsup is very much the OG of the Nazi face punch himself. Because the night before the now infamous Richard Spencer getting punched in the face incident, which I think it's worth us just taking another look at.
Hipster version of the neo-Nazi movement? It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Oh, that never, ever gets old. But the very night before that took place, this happened to our titular Turdburger.
Support fucking Cernovich, dude. I'm not a Cernovich fan. I don't care who you support. Touch me again with your property. So, back up. There's a reason. Do not fucking steal my property. Do not fucking. Out here at Deplorable, just got punched in the face by Antifa. They stole my hat and wouldn't give it back.
Oh yes, wee Jimmy Allsup was very much into getting punched in the face by Antifa before it was cool. Now before we get into James's, let's say, intriguing political viewpoints, I want everyone to remember as we go through all of this, right? The neo-Nazi bilge that you're about to see James fucking spew forth in the course of this audiovisual feast of derpitude. I want you to remember that James Allsup introduced the now President of the United States of America, Jesus Christ, I still can't believe I'm saying those words about him, Donald J. Trump, at an election event in 2016 in Washington State. So please bear in mind throughout this episode that James Allsup is the kind of Nazi scum that Donald Trump rallied to his cause. I think that's very telling about the current state of American politics. Now James Allsup's YouTube channel is very much sort of two channels in one, as it were, because half of his videos are basically boilerplate anti-SJW shite, like this. Feminism's worst nightmare. Triggered college kids get microaggressed. Feminist mansplaining video goes wrong. I mean, just fucking look at all this shit. I mean, it's just so fucking unoriginal. It lacks any thought or skill or wit. It's fucking bullshit, man. I mean, you might as well be doing these fucking SJW cringe compilations. I mean, just fuck this guy, man. And the rest of his channel is just really sort of hard, far-right bullshit, basically. I mean, he tries to dress it up as propaganda, as we'll see. There's a lot of dog whistling and stuff, but it's far-right bullshit, basically. And as is his podcast that he does with a guy called Nick Fuentes, who is the most Hispanically surnamed white nationalist in the history of the world, possibly. But yeah, the two of them do 2 and 3 hour long podcasts. It's entitled The Nationalist Review, and trust me, having listened to many of the episodes there and wasted many hours of my life trudging through that hateful bullshit, I can say absolutely and with entire sincerity, fuck you to both of them. Both Allsup and Fuentes are fucking garbage. But anyways, moving on, James Allsup has now joined the seemingly ever-growing list of people who've been featured in this series who got into far-right politics through right-wing libertarianism or anarcho-capitalism. Yeah, it's a point I've made many times before, but I think it bears repeating that ANCAPism is very much a gateway drug to fascism. Just remember, kids, right-wing libertarianism, just say no. Now, James Allsup is a notorious alt-right dipshit, but incredibly dishonestly, he claims not even to be a part of the alt-right.
And I would not consider myself to be alt-right.
Yeah, that's fucking bullshit, James, right? You know it, I know it, and anyone who knows anything about you fucking knows it. You're very much at the absolute fucking epicenter of alt-right derp. But anyways, let's check out how totally not on the alt-right James Allsup is. I mean, firstly, there's these recurring themes.
But now, because we are just so cucked into oblivion as Westerners, I do not want to be a true conservative, because a true conservative means someone who is politically ineffective and generally, a cuck. Ben Shapiro is a cuck. We've been so convinced by the Marxist school system and Hollywood propaganda. I think there's enough people who are supporters of just uninhibited, degenerate cultural Marxism as the GOP continues to cuck.
They're giving these kids a very warped, culturally Marxist understanding of history and of world history.
So cucking doesn't get you anywhere. Continues to just be a cuck shed of losers.
Yes, those are the kinds of phrases that, if used with the kind of regularity that James Allsup uses them, should raise in your mind big red Nazi flags. I mean, it's not absolutely definitive, of course, but it is very suggestive of an allegiance in that sort of direction. And James is constantly going on about cultural Marxism and degeneracy and calling everything a cuck. Everything, to him, everything is a cuck. It's cuck this, cuck that, cuck. It's like listening to a fucking stuttering chicken. Did someone say chicken? Well, yeah, Rory Katz, I mentioned chicken, but I was just doing a silly joke for the video. I wasn't, like, bringing it up as in, like, I was going to give you some chicken right this very second. Oh, okay then. Yeah. Sorry about that, mate. So are you going to give me the chickens or what? Well, not right now, because I'm doing the video. I do not care. Give me some fucking chickens. Listen, you little shit. You'll get some chicken later, okay? I'm doing the fucking video right now. Jesus fucking Christ, this cat. Anyways, where were we? We were talking about some fucking hipster Nazi douche or something, weren't we? Yes, that's right. We were talking about what a lying sack of shit James Allsup is by claiming that he's not in the alt-right. Well, there is, of course, his constant assertion that basically everything in the world that he dislikes in any way whatsoever is anti-white.
Wake up and start to see the anti-white agenda and rhetoric in our media.
And I think that a lot of this anti-white rhetoric, just like an anti-white message,
I expect them to keep turning up the heat on the anti-white rhetoric. It's almost like diversity is code word for anti-white.
Unity is like diversity. It is a code word for anti-white.
Oh my god, that kind of self-pity is just fucking pathetic. I mean, if you can look at a world which is just dominated in terms of power and money and influence by white people and see it as being anti-white, then you are a complete fucking moron. And another element of his fucking whinging, just like everyone else in the alt-right, is that he loves to whinge about being called a Nazi.
And so these people don't get it. You know, they will counteract the people who are trying to defend them, defend their way of life, defend their heritage, their family, their culture, their nation. And they'll say, oh, you're a Nazi. You know, you're a Nazi.
Even groups like Identity Europa, which are lambasted in the press as neo-Nazis or the KKK.
If you say that, you get called a racist, though. You say you're a racist.
Their goal is to make UCLA a, quote, more equitable space for everyone. Unless, of course, you're a white straight man, in which case you are literally a Nazi.
Yet more self-pity, you sad fucking prick. Well, let's take a look and see if there are any clues that might, give us a hint as to why people might be calling you a Nazi, James. Well, firstly, James, there is your fucking ridiculous, huge obsession that you have with the pseudoscientific bullshit surrounding race and IQ.
The differences in everything. The differences in we can't be afraid to talk about race and IQ.
So if we have open borders and a welfare state, every third worlder in the country with 85 IQ and lower is going to be coming into our country.
But it strikes me as pretty weird that it's okay to say white people are genetically racist, but if you imply that intelligence is in any way genetic, you're all of a sudden a massive racist bigot.
You did nothing wrong by talking about race and IQ because it's a real thing.
Yeah, he tries to use that unscientific fucking bullshit to try and prop up his failed white supremacist worldview, much like he does with this shit.
They have this idea that, if we just be really nice and are really tolerant and caring and allow in just a few more Somalis, then we'll all get along. No, so there are certain biological differences, and there are certain differences in the genealogy and makeup, and human biodiversity is a real thing. Because of human biodiversity, societal and economic inequalities will always exist. You have a political ideology that is not compatible with the 21st century, is not compatible with reality, is not compatible with HBD, most importantly.
Oh yes, human biodiversity, or HBD, is a rather new attempt by neo-Nazi scum like James to introduce the Victorian-era concept of scientific racialism, which for those who don't know is the long dead and frankly ridiculous concept of scientifically endorsed or confirmed white racial supremacy. And that concept was roundly crushed by the overwhelming weight of scientific data. Actual scientific fucking data, unlike the shit these people try to produce, which is pseudo-scientific guff. But HBD, as they like to use it, is basically an attempt to try and sneak in scientific racialism under the guise of it being an actual science, which it isn't. Now, not to get this confused with human genetic variation, which is an actual scientific thing, which is understood to a fairly decent degree. But that relates to certain physiological differences that exist across the span of the human race. It is not, however much the neo-Nazi fucking dickheads like James might want it to mean, it does not, however, mean that white people are basically better than these funny little brown folk, which is basically what they mean when they say HBD. So if you ever encounter one of these fucking tools using phrases like HBD or human biodiversity, you know that they are very, very far into the anti-science, anti-intellectual alt-right swamp. Now, continuing on with how much of a neo-Nazi piece of shit James is, let's take a look at what a fucking massively racist prick he can be.
As mothers of the movement, the mothers of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, who were violent thugs shot by, police or neighborhood watch who did nothing wrong.
Makes you start to wonder, maybe these people would be happier if they went back to whatever country they're from. Dude, these people are scum. They're filth. They're vermin, and they need to be taken care of like any other pest would be, and sent back where they came from.
Yes, he really is vile scum, isn't he? Now, to take it down to a more specific level, and get ready for what you must inevitably have known was going to happen, let's take a look at the compilation of him being an anti-Semitic dog turd. And let's have a look if you can spot the ridiculous dog whistling involved here.
Yeah, and one of the biggest arguments for our alliance with Israel is this idea of we're getting Israeli intelligence, we're getting Israeli information. Well, when have we used that Israeli information? It's been Iraq, it's been Afghanistan, it's been it's been Syria, where apparently, Assad, he's gassing his own people. They're getting gassed. Oh my God. When, that all turns out to be bullshit. Imagine that, somebody lying about people getting gassed. Wow. Like, is that really what your aspirational goal is there, buddy? It's almost like you don't care about the democracy. I don't care about democracy, but it's almost like you don't care about the democracy and you just care about servicing Zod.
Well, yeah, and
right, and the rootless transnational elites that control media, academia, and the banks, etc. Of course, the Mormons. They are.
Yeah, well, and exactly right. Like, and Bannon is a very political mind. Ivanka and Jared Kushner are New York socialites that party with George Soros. And that's not an exaggeration. They literally party with George Soros.
Yeah. Conservatives like Ben Shapiro do not play to win. They play not to lose. There is no practical or tangible benefit that comes to Ben Shapiro as a result of deleting this video and cucking and bowing to the leftist pressure. People will still call him a racist, neo-Nazi, bigot, white supremacist, despite the fact that he's not even white.
And why does he think that Ben Shapiro is not white? It's because Ben Shapiro is Jewish, which is an absolutely boilerplate white nationalist, alt-right, neo-Nazi. I mean, they all basically mean the same fucking thing. Talking point, right? It's a way of getting around the conundrum they find themselves in when they complain on the one hand that everyone is so massively anti-white, but that they hate Jewish people who are white. So they just say, actually the Jews aren't white, even though they're white. I mean, these alt-right fucking dickheads really do tie themselves in knots with their ridiculous stupidity. And now, should we take a look at a bonus piece of his hatred of the Hebrews? Or should that be hatred of the Shebrews on this occasion? Because now it's time for... Yes, it's the inevitable bit about rape. Oh... Now, the upcoming clip is of James Allsup and Nick Fuentes talking about the recent upturn in the number of high-profile sexual assault allegations made against men in the media. Now, take note of the stress and odd tone of voice he uses when pronouncing the surname Weinstein. And see if you can notice the incredibly unsubtle dog whistling that's going on here.
Meanwhile, Harvey Weinstein does stuff that is much worse. Many more women accusing him. Audio evidence of this happening. Many people going back as far as they can remember this happening and knew this was happening. Weinstein just does a week in rehab and he's out. Harvey's out of rehab and he's fixed. Don't you believe it? So, Nick, what is the one thing... the question then, Nick, is what is the difference between Harvey Weinstein and Bill O'Reilly?
I wish I could put my finger on it. I wish I could put a finger on what could that be... What could be that small difference between these two white males, between these two powerful... rich.
Yes, I think that rather childish giggling gives away the level of intellect that we're dealing with here. It's all very sad, isn't it? Now, seemingly his problem with Harvey Weinstein isn't that, he sexually assaulted loads and loads of women over a huge course of time. No. It's the fact that he did it whilst being Jewish. Because he seems okay with Bill O'Reilly having done it, so, I mean, it's almost as if neither James or Nick actually gives the slightest shit about rape victims at all, but want to use those rape victims as a stick with which to beat the racial or religious minority that happens to be the focus of their childish ire. Now, by way of final proof that James is definitely alt-right, regardless of his protestations to the contrary, it's worth noting that he spoke at the Unite the Right rally in Washington, D.C., alongside such alt-right gobshites as Jason Kessler, Baked Alaska, Mike Enoch, Chris Cantwell, before he became a jailbird, and of course the king turd himself, Richard Punchy McPunchface Spencer. And not only did he speak there, but Allsup was at the alt-right Charlottesville gathering on the weekend of the very first Tiki Torch March, which, by the way, guys, is still a really shit look. You look ridiculous. And, of course, the same weekend that Heather Heyer was brutally murdered by a right-wing terrorist. Although Allsup seems to see the murder of Heyer rather differently from me and reality. He didn't even mention the incident in his video entitled The Truth About Charlottesville, which rather puts paid to the lie of that title, and later went on to describe the incident like this.
In fact, Ezra didn't even want Faith at Charlottesville covering the event. It's kind of funny because Faith's footage of the car crash and ended up being like one of the most viral pieces of footage. It went super viral.
Yeah.
She was actually on the scene when the car crash happened.
A car crash? A fucking car crash, James? Really? Are you fucking kidding me? Well, okay then. I mean, if we can just completely change descriptions, regardless of the reality of the situation, for stupidly political reasons, then, I don't know, when Richard Spencer got punched in the face, that wasn't really like a punch in the face as such, that was just a mistimed high five. Or remember when Baked Alaska got maced in the face and he couldn't fucking see or anything, right? Yeah? That wasn't like macing in the face as such, no. That was just a piece of creative optometry. Yeah, I mean, this is fun, isn't it? When you completely disregard reality for your own political ends, you fucking prick. Now look, you utter fucking penis head. You are alt-right as fuck. So stop lying about it, okay? You are a fucking hideously xenophobic, racist, and indeed racialist anti-Semite. And to top it off, an apologist for far-right terrorism. You are an alt-right neo-Nazi streak of shit. So fuck off. Now moving on, this time to his hatred of Muslims. Oh wow, this'll be fucking fun as well, won't it? Right, let's take a look at a video he put up in the immediate aftermath of the Ariana Grande concert bombing, which happened in May of 2017. Now, like so many of his hateful ilk, James rushed this video out literally within hours of the event taking place, before any of the facts of the situation were known and before any actual in-depth analysis could possibly be made on the situation, but he rushed it out anyway, not because he actually gives a fuck about the victims or the families of the victims or the bereaved or anything like that, no, right? It's because he wanted to make money and to do some political point scoring, and that very much shows throughout the fucking god-awful video.
I felt like I can't be surprised at this happening anymore. I can't be surprised when there's a terrorist attack, because we have to expect this. We have to expect this is coming. And I was thinking, if this had been, if this has been in the 1950s, for example, or the 1960s, and you hear that someone had bombed a concert in London, someone had bombed a concert in Europe, and there were dozens of people dead, that would be major news. That would have been something unprecedented, assuming it was, after the World War and everything. But that would have been, as a terrorist attack, that would be huge. But now it's not. Now it's just, this month's iteration of Islamic terror in Europe.
Hang on a minute. Whoa. Time out, fuckboy. What you're claiming is that in the past, Europe didn't get non-Islamic terrorist bombings. Are you fucking kidding me? Seriously? I mean, let's take a look, shall we? So yeah, you're talking utter fucking shit in order to try and whip up hatred and hysteria against Muslims. You piece of fucking trash.
This is the goal of these terrorists, conventionally anyways, is to get people to change how they act, to live rent-free in your head and make you fearful of going out, make you fearful of going to concerts, make you fearful of enjoying your culture in your own country. And I gotta say, they're succeeding. They're winning, because we as Westerners, we as these Western European countries are too cowardly to stand up and address this problem honestly.
What do you mean by we Western European countries? Because I hate to break this to you, cheap imitation of Richard Spencer, but you're not from Europe, okay? You're American. So stop saying we when referring to Western European countries. And by the way, it's little slips of the tongue like that, or purposeful dog whistles like that, whichever happens to be the case, they reveal that you're not actually referring to Western European countries, you're referring to white people. You nasty little bigot.
We're too cowardly to say, hey, look, it's a certain religion committing all of these terrorist attacks. Maybe we should do something about that.
Oh, fucking really? Well, the numbers don't seem to back you up on this one, Jim, because according to Europol, between the years of 2007 to 2017, Islamist attacks accounted for just 9.3% of all terrorist attacks that happened in Europe. Although Muslims did make up a disgustingly disproportionate 72% of those arrested in connection to terrorism. That difference being largely due to the horrific amounts of Islamophobic hysteria whipped up in European populations by fascist scum like you. So, thanks for that. You're literally making the problem worse. And interestingly, that same study noticed a significant fucking rise, quite a spike indeed, of far-right terrorist actions against religious minorities in Europe. Mainly sort of mosques and synagogues, basically. And although I'm sure you would deny it publicly, in your heart of hearts, you probably don't think that's a particularly bad or negative turn of events, do you? You fucking prick.
Hey, look, it's not the Polish out blowing up themselves, making suicide vests full of nails and nuts and bolts and blowing up. It's not the Poles doing that. It's not the Ecuadorians doing that.
Ecuador? What the fuck are you talking about? That's not a Western European nation, or even really a sort of thinly veiled reference towards white people. I mean, what the fuck? That's just weird. It's almost as if you're just plucking this stuff out of your arse in order to rush out a video in the immediate aftermath after a terrorist incident, in order to make money and politically capitalise on the deaths of innocent children, which would make you a truly, truly terrible person.
It's not the Poles doing that. It's not the Ecuadorians doing that. It's not the Chinese. It's not the Japanese doing this.
Hang on a minute, right. So now the claim is that China and Japan don't get terrorist attacks. Oh, just fuck off. So yet again, you're fucking wrong, and you're only doing this in order to try and whip up hatred against Muslims, to make Muslims the one and only scapegoat we can attack in this case. And it's fucked up, so, stop.
Today it is not the people who are Japanese or Chinese or it's not Buddhists, it's not Christians.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Do you know how many terrorist attacks I've had to look up in this little bit now? I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? Jesus fucking Christ. Right, so now your claim is that Buddhists and Christians don't do terrorist attacks. Well, look, I'm not putting together another fucking montage, okay? I've already done 2. It's fucking horrifically depressing. Right, in terms of Christians, in the first of the 2 montages, the one dealing with Europe specifically, we saw ETA and the IRA shown their terrorist attacks. So clearly Christians have been doing terrorist attacks, so that's them covered, right? And in terms of the Buddhists, I would advise you to look at what the Buddhists are doing. Unfortunately, not all Buddhists, of course, hashtag not all Buddhists. Anyway, but what some Buddhists are doing to the Rohingya people in Myanmar. That is state-sanctioned and indeed state-funded terrorism by Buddhists. So, that's them covered too. Go fuck yourself, you lying piece of shit.
Multiculturalism breeds a fracture in society where these people don't live. They live in the same country. They live in the same geographic territory, but they don't live in the same culture. And they're not getting along. They're not integrating. They're not assimilating. And Europeans keep having this idea that we just need to be nicer to them. We need to be more accommodating. We need to give them more language classes. And it's not going to work.
Again, stop saying we, okay? You are not from here. And I know you think you have some sort of claim over the lands of Europe because of racial purity or white heritage or whatever fucking shit you have happened to dream up in your fucking head. But you aren't actually European, as in, from Europe. And whilst you are perfectly entitled to an opinion on these matters, you are not a citizen, a taxpayer or a voter in any European nation. So you can't just go around fucking telling us what we must or mustn't do in order to preserve your fucking mythical and frankly unworkable idea of white purity or whatever the fuck shit you want to try and push on everyone. So how about you shut the fuck up?
The most frustrating thing for me about this whole terrorist attack, about every single one of these terrorist attacks, every one of these bombings, everything that goes on, it's not so much that the individual incident happened. Obviously, I'm, it's frustrating and it's maddening to an extent that this keeps happening. But this individual attack doesn't upset me as much as the fact that we will not learn our lesson and we will continue to let the next attack happen.
Why is it that you never react that way when there's a gun massacre in America? Apart from the fact that obviously they happen virtually every fucking day, and if you did a video like this in response to every single one of them, you'd never stop making these kind of videos. But apart from that, right, why is it you never react that way to gun slaughter in your country? Because you rushed out this video, this fucking hateful piece of shit, in the immediate aftermath of a terrorist outrage. But then a few weeks later, when the Las Vegas fucking shootings happened, where hundreds of your fellow countrymen were gunned down and fucking dozens of them were killed, there wasn't a video on your channel about that, surprisingly enough. I wonder if it has anything to do with the colour of the skin of the particular fucking perpetrator scumbag of each of those incidents. Which would mean that you're not actually interested in the killing of innocent civilians, but just on your ability to be able to capitalise on the killing of innocent civilians. Which leads me back to the point I made earlier, which is that you are a truly, truly awful human being.
That's what upsets me about this. That's what triggers me about this, is that we're not going to learn. The UK, Britain, they're not going to learn from the 20 or so, maybe 30, maybe 40 dead tonight. They're not going to take a lesson away from that. France is not going to learn from that. Germany's not going to learn from that. Austria may learn from that. But none of these countries are going to learn their lesson from this.
A quick note here as to why he mentioned the nation of Austria there as having learnt its lesson or whatever. It's because at the time that he made this video, it looked like an Austrian fascist was going to win the presidency of that country. Now, thankfully, that didn't end up actually happening, although it wouldn't have really made much difference either way, because the role of presidency is largely ceremonial in Austria. Not that Jimmy Boy here would know that, because he doesn't know anything about European politics at all, it seems. Not that that's actually going to stop him from talking about it, of course.
So they're going to allow the next attack to happen, where 25 more will die. Then they're going to allow the next one where 30 will die. Like, it's going to keep building on each other because we are so cowardly as Western European countries to tell the truth, to acknowledge these problems, to acknowledge that multiculturalism has failed, to seal our borders, to deport the refugees, to deport the immigrants. We are too cowardly to do this.
Again, dickhead, right? Listen to me now. They're not your fucking borders, okay? Stop saying our borders and we when referencing Europe. You're not European. You don't get to tell us what to fucking do.
The solutions are in front of us, but no one will live up and seize them. No one will take the bull by the hands.
Did you just say take the bull by the hands? The fuck? Oh, sweet Jesus, what is this ungodly chimera? Kill it! Kill it with fire! Yeah, that was a bit weird, wasn't it? Basically the point being, bulls don't have hands. The phrase you're looking for there is grab the bull by the horns, which you would have been able to correct had you not been absolutely insistent on getting it out immediately because, you know, you wanted to take advantage of dead children, you piece of shit. Anyways, let's wrap up now, because I am so fucking done with James Allsup. It's ridiculous. James, some advice for you. Stop being a hateful prick. Stop hating on Jews. Stop hating on Muslims. Stop hating on women. And by the way, yeah, sorry I didn't really get into his sort of anti-SJW videos. Like I said at the start, they're basically boilerplate anti-SJW stuff. So they weren't really that interesting, and I felt that the racial stuff he's put out is far more worthy of being slapped the fuck down. So that's why I focused on that rather than the anti-SJW stuff. Yeah. And he's hideous, isn't he, James? I'm not going to go into particularly deep psychological reasons as to why that might be. Not that I ever really do, but especially on this occasion, because he's just a hateful bigot. And hopefully one day he grows out of it, but I'm really not confident he will. but let's hope he does. Yeah, he's a really, really worthless individual, frankly. That I don't see any redeeming features at all. But anyway, with all of that said, done, and out of the way, there is just one thing left for me to say. Random bit of free poetry there. James Allsup, go fuck yourself.